We have the extraordinary pleasure of introducing Brother Luke Devine, who is here by miracle appearance. We thought he would head back to the West Coast before he could give a Friday night meeting, only to discover that we failed to schedule a Friday night meeting. And so he's here. So I will let him give you all his credentials, but he is a Fritz Eichenberg expert. Okay. I'm going to turn up the lights. Everybody say, yay, Brother Luke!
Come on, Luke! Come on, Luke!
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who is here. I was going to say thank you to those on Zoom, but anyway, microphone problems with my laptop. So anyway, I want to begin, actually, this presentation will have a few different parts to it. And first, I would like to introduce my own kind of journey into what led me to study Fritz Eichenberg, and some of the background, the study of creativity, and my own journey into monasticism, a little bit about that. And then the life and art of Fritz Eichenberg, and then the cloud of witnesses to with that. So first part, something about myself is that sometimes people ask me where I'm from. It's a good question. I like to ask people that myself, but I kind of, it's a little bit complicated, but I typically will say that I'm from Springfield, Illinois. My family moved around, and then I did go to all 4 years of high school at a Catholic high school, Sacred Heart Griffin High School in Springfield, Illinois, class of 1990. That gives you a little bit of my age, but I grew up Roman Catholic, and this is a point where I was really kind of going off on my own and not really practicing the faith. And then, interesting fact, Dorothy Day and I both went to the same college for undergraduate. Trivia question, does anyone know where that is? Oh, hey, wow, very good, yes. University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. I forget what years she was there, and I don't go back that far. But after my first year at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, similar to Dorothy Day, her family moved from Chicago to New York, and that brought her to New York. My family moved from Springfield, Illinois to Laramie, Wyoming. So I moved to Laramie, Wyoming, and also I changed my major from graphic design to painting. And I see that as kind of significant personally, because I really went on a track where graphic design is where you're going to make some income. And I decided, you know, I wasn't concerned about that. This is what I wanted to do. So anyway, that's the path that led me from Laramie, Wyoming. I then transferred back to Illinois, but Chicago. I went a few years to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I was there for a few semesters, and I was in Winter Park neighborhood. Some of you might know some of that if you're familiar with Chicago. And I think there were some other formative things. I have a lot in my presentation, so I also need to make sure I'm not getting too bogged down as I go along. But here is one of my images from about that time. I think kind of a Keith Haring influence there. People being turned into numbers, kind of a surrealist type thing. From Chicago, I moved to Washington State. Kind of different stories related to that as well. But one thing in Washington State is that I met some people who were Eastern Orthodox Christian. Their parish was St. Herman of Alaska. And for me, I had never heard of St. Herman of Alaska. I had hardly even heard of the Eastern Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox. And it really kind of caught my interest, particularly the iconography. So all of this really caught my interest and led me to just really kind of explore Christianity more. And they also kind of introduced me to monasticism, basically, and pointed to me and said that there is monasticism in the Catholic Church as well, and so that kind of reconnected me to the Catholic Church. From there, from Port Townsend, Washington, where I first moved to Washington State, I moved down to Lacey, near Olympia, to go to St. Martin's University, a Benedictine, Catholic and Benedictine university, to finish my undergraduate degree. I was going to put a slide in here, but I forgot to do that. I did my senior thesis on a printmaker, Japanese printmaker, Sadao Watanabe. Some of you may be familiar with him. But going to St. Martin's College and University was a chance for me to also think about Benedictine life. So in 2001, I went into monastic life at St. Martin's. Let's see, take a look. And so I was also going to mention, I took my first vows. They're kind of technically called simple vows in 2003. It's kind of, a formative. And then I took my solemn vows in 2006. Those are basically final vows. Abbot Neil Roth was the abbot at the time. Up until 2020, he stepped down, and now Abbot Marion Wynn is our abbot. And just a shout out to of appreciation to both of those abbots over time for the directions that I took in my studies. In some ways, a little bit not typical for a Benedictine. A lot of Benedictines will typically take solemn vows and then go into priesthood. To go to priesthood would typically, at our monastery, you would be sent to Mount Angel Seminary, that is run by Mount Angel Abbey in Oregon. But I really felt a call to eventually teach in the university. And so I first went to study in Boston, Western Jesuit School of Theology, which is now Boston College School of Theology and Ministry. Some of the things that I went to study in that. So I knew that I was interested in relationship between religion and art, and I also felt that I wasn't really drawn to liturgical studies, which is one of the typical directions that they go into. But I felt I didn't, this is maybe an outsider's looking at it, but it seems like liturgical studies can be Catholics talking with other Catholics. And I felt like I wasn't really interested in kind of some of the minutiae that seems to be, I might be generalizing there, but so some of the things that I went into study, and I took a course. I was also, right before I went to study in Boston, I was able to take a trip to Asia, 10 days in Korea, 10 days in China. I had siblings in both of those places, so I was able to spend some time there, and kind of felt like I was interested in studying Asian religions. That's another part of something that the Benedictines have been involved in, is dialogue with particularly Buddhism as a very, very monastic religion. Thomas Merton was definitely an influence in me, drawing me to Benedictine life. And that's the other part of Thomas Merton. That's he is really one of the key foundational figures in interreligious dialogue and setting up dialogue between Catholics, Christians, and Buddhists. I was able to take some courses in Buddhism at Harvard Divinity School, and I was also studying things, Christianity in Asia as well. And so went into some of that directions, and then went back to teach at St. Martin's, and then went to study for my PhD at Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. And I continued to be interested in monastic dialogue with Buddhism and became a board member of MID, Benedictines in dialogue with other religions, particularly Buddhism, and Islam more recently. Here are some of the scholars of religion that, art and religion that were influential for me at GTU. I think most of you, yeah. So I was really going in more of an art historical direction. That's kind of another direction, is that I'm not really, strictly speaking, a theologian in that sense. And then I took this course at the University of California that was basically art history. We didn't look at any artists. We were studying art historians. So if you recognize any of these names, probably not, or maybe just a few here or there. Ultimately, the one that kind of really stood out to me were Ernst Chris and Otto Kurz. Their book, Legend, Myth, and Magic and the Image of the Artist, a Historical Experiment. Here's some of the things. I'm trying to think of, let's see. Yeah, there are certain stereotype notions linked with the artist, preconceptions that have never entirely lost their significance, still influence our view of what an artist is. I think they were writing in the 1930s or so. There's the story of Giotto is one of the key stories of an artist. They describe their own approach as sociological. And I thought that was interesting. But that was a little bit more what I was looking for, more so than theological interpretations. I knew a Jesuit, Patrick Kelly, and he is an author and scholar of religion and sports. And he introduced me to an area that is creativity studies. One of the key figures in that area is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And so this is basically the direction that I went into. This is one of the theories. And I thought, how much do I really want to get into this? But I think I'll just go over some of this. And part of what I am presenting here is ultimately to explain what I'm going to leave out of my biography of Fritz Eichenberg. In a way, this is what my dissertation is. My dissertation starts with 80 pages before I start talking about Fritz Eichenberg. So I really realized, okay, to revise my book, I want to do something, think about the audience. And so for writing the dissertation, it was, trying to cover all the bases as far as theories and so forth and all that. But here's just a little bit of overview of my theories and what is ultimately going to be set aside. And by the time I write this book, what we can say about this kind of evolving systems theory and approach is the importance of the context on the artist. It used to be, the story of Giotto is one that is kind of, artists are geniuses, basically kind of God-given gifts to be able to do what they do. And in the middle of the 20th century, these psychologists started to really say that that isn't true, that there is much more about the context that is determining what the artist will do and so forth. So here are some of the scholars in that area. and some of that. Howard Gardner, some of you might know Howard Gardner. He wrote about multiple intelligences, and so there you go. His book actually takes one of each of the 7 intelligences. I think later he put an 8th one. So it's interesting to see also that he has Gandhi. So for me, coming from art history, you study artists and you study art. You wouldn't really study Gandhi or other people that are beyond art. Whereas creativity studies is about creativity in all kinds of different domains. So I thought that was very interesting. Here is another scholar who is actually, I was honored to have her on my dissertation committee as well. One of the things that she pointed out that I like to note as well is she was questioning how much I was paying attention to gender and creativity, differences in gender for creativity. And so I realized that that was not something that I had really explored. And so I just kind of note that I've kind of taken in some ways somewhat general, but that's something to develop over time as well. Here are some in creativity and spirituality, and I could go into how I'm a little bit different from each of these. Ananda Kumaraswamy is one that I kind of bring out, is that you can kind of see a Hindu kind of influence in his mentality here. Art is religion, religion art, not related, but the same. Basically not just related, but the same thing. And I disagree. Here is my kind of, and it's important for me to disagree because I see spirituality and creativity as separate things. And they can enhance each other. And a lot of times when they enhance each other, it looks like they're the same. They're intertwined closely. But I think there are times where spirituality obstructs creativity, or creativity obstructs spirituality. So in those kinds of ways where they're kind of obstructing each other, and that's kind of one of the things that can happen when you're studying Van Gogh and Monet and Picasso, is that probably their spirituality could be very intertwined. But someone like Picasso, a lot of times people would say, oh, great artist, but horrible person. So, okay, is there something there? So I'm really interested in that, is kind of my thing about creativity and spirituality. Here's another scholar that is very influential for me. He did interviews with, and this was kind of a multiple generational, or several scholars over time kind of went into this. From the University of Chicago, they had something like 180 undergraduate students at the university, or at the School of the Art Institute, and they gave them all these tests, probably like Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, maybe, I don't know, but other kind of psychological tests. Maybe those are the ones that pop into my mind more frequently, but all kinds of different tests, and then they would follow up 5 years later and say, which ones became successful artists? Were they the ones that we predicted? And then Mark Freeman came, he was part of that study while he was a doctoral student, and then later, like 20 years ago, he followed up. And a lot of their responses were very, very interesting to me. What they were saying, right, he was a graduate student at the time of the first study, and then followed up later. Artists' association with mythology, Prometheus, the myth of creativity. The art market demands that the artist go from being a saint to a salesman, from a priest to a pimp. Right, kind of the idea of selling out based on the Faust myth is very important for artists. What is genuine? Spoke about Giotto a little bit more. I thought I was going to write my dissertation on Hildegard of Bingen, and I get into that. Even going back to the Golden Calf, I kind of read that from the perspective that I've been talking about, the relationship between creativity and spirituality. And so these different kinds of ideas of what an artist is, and a lot of these that have similarities to overlap with religion. And among these, there is that artist, the artist persona that Eichenberg developed, of the artist as a witness, his pamphlet, Artist on the Witness Stand. So it's kind of some of that. When it comes to this relationship between creativity and spirituality, a lot of times when I'm trying to explain it to other people, I use Amadeus as an example, rather than Fritz Eichenberg, because people don't know Fritz Eichenberg, and so it's like introducing a theory and a new person, whereas like, here's my theory, and you may have even seen this movie. And to me, it's another one of those examples where creativity and spirituality are not aligned. The movie is not necessarily really about Amadeus, it's more about Salieri. It's his story, and there's a lot of overlap between religion and creativity and art here. And it's an example of something that didn't really mesh. He didn't really accomplish a harmony between creativity and spirituality. I just point to that as an example. There's more in creativity studies about the case studies method, so that is what I kind of follow, is the case studies method, which also the case study method, because some of these, they would say, we're going to study 200 different artists and see if we can see any patterns. The case study method is just to say, focus on one artist and go into more depth. You might not be able to find patterns as far as comparison, but you're going to more depth in that way. So for a while I thought I was going to focus on Hildegard of Bingen, and it didn't go into that direction, and basically all this theory and method, relationship between creativity and spirituality, I know I can apply it to someone else, but who was that someone else going to be? When it comes to how I found out about Fritz Eichenberg, I look back and I think there were Fritz Eichenberg images in our prayer books, and I would see particularly Christ of the Breadline, and at one point I just thought, who is that artist? And eventually do a Google search, okay, that's the image, and find out that this is by Fritz Eichenberg. And so that led me to find out more about Fritz Eichenberg. He has some interviews at Archives of American Art, and the full text is printed on their webpage. So I was able to do my comprehensive exam paper on Fritz Eichenberg, which is a stepping stone to my dissertation. Found some other sources, Works of Mercy by Orbis Press, Orbis Books, Wood in the Graver by Fritz Eichenberg is a very good overview of his career. Artist on the Witness Stand, and a bit of show and tell. Here's a copy, and I can just pass this around if people want to take a look.
Yeah.
So I was in Chicago for a year, working on my dissertation proposal. I would take trips up to Catholic Worker Dorothy Day Archives at Marquette. While I was there, Rainer Library. Quick shout out to Phil Winkle. Yeah. Give it up, Phil. Oh, hey.
Yeah,
Yeah, great to work with him on some of those visits. Yeah, just incredible knowledge. And then I didn't know where Fritz Eichenberg's archives were until I was there. Marquette led me to Fritz Eichenberg's papers were at Yale, so I took the train from Chicago to New Haven to visit Fritz Eichenberg's and part of the Arts of the Book collection, New Haven in February. And I stayed at Amistad, Catholic work.
You're a Catholic worker.
Give it up for Amistad. Would be a picture of Dorothy Day there, one for the snow. Yeah, so shout out also to Mark and Luz as well for hosting me there.
Go Mark and Luz.
Went back to St. Martin's to finish my dissertation. So yeah, as I mentioned, a case study, Fritz Eichenberg, a case study in the relationship between creativity and spirituality. And so, I mean, it really is, my project now is revising my dissertation. And so what I've just gone through, thank you for your patience, is basically what I'm setting aside. So I think there'll definitely still be some of that in what I'm working on as a biography. But yeah, these first couple chapters, that's like 80 pages right there, just talking about theory and method and disciplines and this scholar and that scholar, and I'm not the same as this or that or whatever, until we start the biographical overview on chapter 3, then kind of get back into that again. And so yeah, those are the chapters of the dissertation that I'm also, oops, I don't know why this is here. Yeah, so I went back to teaching full-time at St. Martin's. So yeah, here are chapters that I'm setting aside. I mean, that's still, actually, the relationship between creativity and spirituality has a lot, is kind of my foundation for teaching a course on religion and visual art. So it's not like I'm setting aside, it's still part of teaching, and it kind of helps me, it gives my foundation for teaching. And I don't always, I can't really present that often on Fritz Eichenberg. Sometimes once a semester, sometimes not at all during the semester. Right. But anyway, sort of the sabbatical has just been really wonderful to be able to delve into this. Here's the chapters. And so I'm basically, in my chapter 3, here is how I divide things up according to his life. I'm not trying to present it in any kind of interesting way. And so the book I'm working on now, I do want to present and arrange things in a more engaging way. So here's what I have. Chapter 1 will be Cologne, City of Art and Religion. The 20s in Leipzig and Berlin for Chapter 2. Chapter 3, from Nazi Germany to America during the Depression. Chapter 4, Spiritual Journey to Quakerism in the Shadow of World War II. Chapter 5, Meeting Dorothy Day. Chapter 6, Teaching Career. And then Chapter 7, Retirement from Teaching. That's what I have as far as how the book will be set up.